come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. All out of bubblegum.
So I'm not really sure how to start this off. I don't like showing my face because just due to the nature of my job, I have to have some sort of anonymity so I can speak freely and openly, which is kind of weird considering where I work and who I work for, but I am Feel the Burn, and I just wanted to give a little bit of insight into some things you may not know about. You know, you have to speak about what you know about, and this is one of the topics I happen to know about really well as it relates to the infection of the SJW plague and how far it's gone. A few weeks ago, Computing Forever, Dave Cullen, started doing a series of videos on Tuesdays where he would read letters from people who had SJW horror stories, and I think this is good because these anecdotes are perfect for sort of pinpointing the problem on a micro scale and allowing us to group commiserate and see how far the problem has gone and where the problems are, and hear these specific anecdotes lets us really put a face on the SJW problem at large. So I want to apologize in advance. When I wrote this, I originally wrote this letter for Dave Cullen to read in his series, and I said, well, fuck, I've got the time and the ability. Why don't I just record something? Why don't I just read their letter, record it, throw it up? I don't have to wait for Dave to come through his emails, Computing Forever, come through his emails and find my letter. So since I have the ability, and I have Guinness, and I have time, and it's a weekend, I figured I would read the letter, and I apologize in advance for all the background noise and everything. I have no control over that. It is very cold and snowy and icy here in the DC area where I currently reside, so I've got plenty of heaters on in this little basement that I'm working out of, a little basement down here. And everyone above me right now, even though it's 10 o'clock at night and people have gone to bed, they have decided that it's time for them to just randomly flush toilets and run water down the drain. So I apologize for those noises in advance. Try to ignore those. And I also want to apologize in advance that this turned out way longer than I thought it was going to turn out. So here it goes. As I wrote to Dave, this won't be the exact letter I wrote because I'm going to expound on it in some parts since I have the time and opportunity to do it. There's some parts I'm going to add to it and talk a little more about it. So recently, President-elect Trump said he will nominate U.S. Marine General retired James Mattis as Defense Secretary. And you might not believe it, but there is a collective sigh of relief across the military that James Mattis is in contention and is the one he will be nominating to be Secretary of Defense. Why? Basically because the United States military is tired of being used as guinea pigs for social experimentation, and such as women in direct combat units. I know other countries do it, but our country has not done it as of yet. And what other country has the best military in the world? I know other countries do it, but there's a reason we haven't done it yet. A new transgender service policy, and there are other numerous minutia and policies that have been enacted over the past 8 years that sort of delve into this realm of social justice, and it is their prerogative, right? They run the government. He is the executive. He gets to appoint the rules and with Congress ratify the rules and regulations that govern the United States military. So I'm just saying there are things that have been done that not a lot of people agree with, and maybe they do agree with them, like me, but they think they have not been properly vetted, studied before being enacted. So in order to virtue signal, they sort of rush some things along and put them in place when they shouldn't have. So I mentioned two policies: women in direct combat units like infantry, special forces, and the transgender policy is two very specific policies. But a lot of these policies leave many questions unanswered, as Obama and his Secretary of Defense will leave office, and they're going to leave it for the next guy to sort out. And so I'm just going to expand on this a little bit. I can tell you from personal experience that social justice has infected the United States military as well. This is dangerous for the world. Why? Because for better or for worse, for good or bad, we have our hands in a lot of pots. And the world, for better or worse, for good or bad, looks to us to provide a certain amount of protection. And not something that I necessarily like. I think at this point it's a position the United States takes reluctantly. And if President Trump stays true to his word, President-elect Trump stays true to his word, it's going to be a role we're going to be pulling back a lot more from as he takes office. And we've pulled back a lot during the Obama administration. We've substituted drones for boots. So, we don't have people on the ground. But we do have, an involved role in, 12 to 17 countries, depending on which day of the week it is. So it's dangerous for the world for the United States military to be destabilized for the purpose of social justice or social experimentation. We're a stabilizing force and a force for peace around the world. Now, let me state, I used to consider myself a liberal. I don't know what I am anymore. I can't call myself a liberal because I don't agree with most of the things that people calling themselves liberals do anymore. So this was the first presidential election I've been voting since 2000 when I turned 18. And this will be the first presidential election that I didn't vote for a Democrat for president, and I didn't vote for any Democrats at all. So now, at this time, we find ourselves, our country, along with our military forces, facing another cultural revolution. It's not new. We've been through cultural revolutions and things like this before, yet we haven't. It's not a revolution that makes our military any better in the long run because it's not constructive and inclusive. It's a revolution of destruction and exclusivity. In instances, it pushes for special treatment over equality. Also, the Army is so inundated with administrative briefings from these social justice policies that on things like preventing sexual harassment and assault prevention, which should be prevented, but it doesn't take 6 briefings a year to get that through someone's head. You either are a decent person who doesn't do those things, or you are a bad person who does those things, and I don't think a briefing is going to stop you. So when I say things like SHARP or sexual harassment and assault rape prevention, a lot of that is just third wave feminist propaganda. We also have equal opportunity and diversity training. Read into that white guilt training. Anti-hazing, anti-bullying training. These all overwhelm the ability for soldiers, to train and do their actual combat jobs. And on top of that, they infantilize adults whom we trust to make decisions about life or death on the battlefield. So we're going to give Johnny a weapon when he's 18 years old, and we're going to push him out onto the battlefields of Afghanistan or Iraq. And we are going to require that he have the maturity to make decisions in a split second that could save or take a person's life. But before Johnny goes to combat, he spends hours of every training month in administrative briefings telling him how horrible of a person he is, first of all, and secondly, infantilizing and talking condescending to him and telling him basically he doesn't know what he's doing. At any point he could lose his mind and just start raping and killing everyone. So that's a real problem with a lot of these briefings we have. So why do we want General Mattis to come in and be the Secretary of Defense? Because we want a grown-up who treats service members like people and not children to run the government again. That's the very basic reason behind why some military members voted for Donald Trump. They may disagree with everything else. They may be repulsed by him personally. They may think the things he's said have been ludicrous, insane, disgusting. But that repulsion does not overwhelm our repulsion to the policies and procedures that are in place that have inundated the military with a culture of condescension, infantilization, and it really doesn't make the military, all of this done in the name of social justice, and it doesn't make the military any stronger in the long run. Now, you may be thinking, I'm just a right-wing lunatic who hates gay people, hates blacks. Nothing could be further from the truth. I've voted Democrat almost my entire life, which maybe you could make that argument since I voted Democrat my entire life. I considered myself a liberal. I don't have any problems with gay people or gay people getting married. If the state's going to administer contracts of marriage, they should do it for all consenting adults equally. So I was all for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was a horrible and degrading and bigoted policy signed by the Clinton administration when I was just a kid. I actually had the horror of having to separate a soldier from service under this policy because it was the law, and the policy and the rule of law is important to maintain good order and discipline. I regret it, sure, but I didn't want to do it. But those were the rules of the time, and I have to follow the rules set forth by the Congress and the President. My personal opinion on such matters is not part of the equation when it comes to enforcement, because if we can selectively enforce laws and regulations and policies when we have people under our command, it serves no purpose for good order and discipline. So now we've opened up all positions to women, all direct combat positions, infantry, special forces, rangers, all that. I agree with letting women serve in direct combat jobs, so long as they can meet the standard to serve in those occupations and positions. Except now we have people saying the standards in some areas are too hard, like the U.S. Marine Corps Infantry Officers Course, which I think 17 females have gone through it, and none have passed. Zero have passed. And it has a very high failure rate even for men as a basic course of graduation. So it's not like a special forces course. It's Marine Corps Infantry Officers Course. It's just the basic course to get in to be an officer in the infantry in the Marine Corps. And it has a pretty high failure rate anyways. So in things like special forces and rangers, and it's all hard. And it's hard, and the reasons it's hard is because we're the best in the world. People expect us to be the best in the world. So we have a certain amount of standards. And we have a certain standard we have to uphold. So now we have people complaining that these standards are too hard. And this proves that they didn't want equality of opportunity in the first place. They wanted equality of guaranteed outcome. The people pushing these policy changes. And it's not going to happen. The people inside the military are not going to allow for the change in standards. They won't allow it to happen, so I wouldn't be afraid of that. And women were moving just as fast to jump into these new combat positions as they were to raise objections to the selective service standard that 18-year-old men have in the United States, where they have to register or they don't get federal jobs, student loans, or any of that stuff, unless they can prove conscientious objection. So they were about moving just as quickly to register for the draft as they were to hop into these new combat positions. They were moving so fast, in fact, that the Sergeant Major of the Army had to send out a letter begging for women to jump into these spots that we were holding open for them. Now, for the transgender, of course, because some animals are more equal than others, U.S. Air Force just issued a policy stating airmen in transition do not have to pass a physical fitness test. So if you come into the Air Force and you decide that you want the government to pay for your transition, whatever. During that time of transition, which I don't know how long it takes, I'm sure doing the hormones and all that stuff takes a year or maybe more. I'm not sure. But over that time, you don't have to take a fitness test, whereas your peers would have to take 2, 3, 4 fitness tests, and you'll be exempted from those. So you'll have an exception to the standard. And these are just little subversions to the standard and special treatment for special snowflakes that really irk a lot of people like me. It makes me angry because when you apply one standard to one set of people and another to another set of people, it's mostly detrimental to unit cohesion. Singling individuals out for special favors or special treatment is the opposite of what you would want to do to build a cohesive team. These special treatments destroy unity. And unity is necessary to ensure completion of the mission. And most people who are minorities will tell you they don't want special treatment anyways. They want to be treated like everyone else, because the last thing you want to do in an element that demands uniformity is be the person not in uniform. Oh, and speaking of physical fitness tests and making exceptions for women to be accepted into combat arms, now, when, let's say, there were recently some females who graduated from Ranger School, they had to pass a physical fitness test in order to go to Ranger School. Now, any person who goes to Ranger School, now our physical fitness tests in the Army are divided by gender and age. Each have different cutoff points. So when you go to Ranger School as a male, you have to, everyone, if I'm 40 years old and I decide I want to go to Ranger School for some godforsaken reason, I have to pass the 17 to 20-year-old fitness test at a certain standard. No exceptions. But the male and female physical fitness tests are different. There's a large disparity between what a female has to do and what a male has to do. But I'm being told we're equal, and all things are equal. But females get a break on the physical fitness test. Wait, I'm supposed to deny science for equality, right? That's the new mantra of the new regime. So why don't we all have the same fitness test? Because there are some portions of the fitness test where I have to do 600% more work to get the same score as a female of my same age. So that seems a little unfair. Where's the equality there? So on my next physical fitness test, I just decided I'm going to say I'm gender fluid. I'm going to identify as female on that day of that fitness test, and I can do 600% less work, 60% less work, depending on whether we're talking about 2-mile run, 2 minutes of push-ups, or 2 minutes of sit-ups. I can do a lot less work, get the same points and the same score, and there's nothing they can do about it unless they want a lawsuit on their hands and they want to be sued for discrimination. And there have been some pretty infamous instances of where this social justice culture and atmosphere has led to some very newsworthy events, and they really go to show and highlight how bad it's gotten and how far it goes. For instance, I'll go through a few this year. In March of 2016, when soldiers at Fort Gordon were doing their mandatory equal opportunity training, and the equal opportunity advisors decided to give a class on white privilege. Now think about the atmosphere and culture it breeds to have a briefing on white privilege. And think about the culture that would have to exist for a person to feel comfortable giving a briefing like that to a mixed audience, which is statistically going to be mostly white men. Now the Army says this whole white privilege class was a mistake, and it's hard to believe, and it's just hard for me to believe given my time in the military. I know the people they select from the ranks to become EO advisors are true believers in everything the racial grievance industry sells. They have to be, or they can't make it into and through the training to get the position. And And the crazy thing about them being a true believer in all of that racial grievance stuff is that they're put in charge of people, because these are usually people of a senior rank. They have been in charge in their military career of people of all races based solely upon their merit and rank. U.S. military is about as close to a true meritocracy as you can get. At least it used to be. I don't really believe it is anymore, because career managers are now being informally, sort of formally, informally pushed to make decisions based upon characteristics which don't matter, like race and gender. And I'll address this a little bit in a couple of seconds. And there was another event, May 2016, when about 10 black female West Point cadets were photographed giving a Black Power salute in uniform. This was obvious and blatant political activism with racial undertones supporting Black Lives Matter. It was a very direct and blatant violation of Army regulation and DoD policies on making, first of all, if you believe Black Lives Matter is a racist organization, as I do, any support given to Black Lives Matter while in uniform is a violation of EO and Army regulation DoD policies that can be punishable by UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, which you can actually be severely reprimanded and punished for it. They can take your pay, take your rank. It's also a violation of DoD policies that don't allow you to make political statements while in uniform. And it turns out they weren't punished. And they probably received a stern lecture from the Commandant of Cadets at West Point. And because if you punish them, what happens? It's just the system of angry white men trying to keep black women down, right? So really, what good comes out of punishing them? And I think the most damning thing about those West Point cadets is that they are attending one of the best universities in the U.S. based upon their own merit. West Point is not easy to get into. And once you are there, it is not easy to stay there. It's not easy to stay in. You have to be academically, physically fit. And you're looking at, after your 4 years there, you're getting a commission, you're going to be a second lieutenant, so you have to be militarily, correct and dedicated and disciplined and duty on your country and all that stuff. So they were black women there at West Point who got into West Point and stayed at West Point based upon their being smart. I mean, despite this obvious lapse in thinking, and they're being hardworking students. But it's also hard for me to imagine that 10 white men giving the white power salute in uniform would be given equally delicate treatment. But we're supposed to believe this myth that all things are equal. In mere months, these 10 female cadets will be out leading formations of soldiers, possibly in charge of up to 40 people as second lieutenants in the Army. And let me tell you, that gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling about the security of our nation and the security of our armed forces and our institutions, for sure. And another problem. We also have what I'm supposed to believe is a problem or crisis in the military of not having enough minority general officers. We're especially lacking diversity in officers who command actual combat units. It's mostly white men who actually command these units. Why? Because of minorities, especially black people, do not go into combat arms at the rate that their white counterparts do. And up until this year, women weren't allowed in these combat specialties. Why don't black people join combat arms? I don't know. They just don't. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist. They don't. They're more likely to join the service and service support ranks, which is like logistics and MPs and all that sort of stuff. So they just don't join the career progression that puts them into becoming commanders of combat arms units, which come from combat arms ranks. So now the Army wants to institute a form of affirmative action in the Rooney Rule, like we have in the National Football League, to force young minority officers in assignments like general's aide or aide de camp, so they can get connections and get the assignments to push them further up the ladder. Because, you know, if you go to be a general's aide, you basically have a general in your pocket that you can call to get help with assignments. You know, hey, I want to go to this assignment next because it's going to have lift on my career. It's going to help me get further along in my career, get promoted ahead of my peers maybe. It's going to guarantee my promotion. So, and the Rooney Rule is something the NFL came up with, where they said, you know, we don't have enough people of color, we don't have enough minorities, so we're going to start hiring them in directly in it, and that's going to be a screening criteria now. So now we're going to push better people, maybe better people out, but as long as we hire someone that's a minority, that all things wash out, even if they weren't a better person for the job. But there's a distinct problem in the military with giving the wrong job to the wrong person, or to a person who is not qualified. Because when they make decisions at high levels, lots of people could die. And the higher they go, the more people they're in charge of, the more lives they affect. They have to be the best and the brightest at receiving information, interpreting information, analyzing, and making decisions. I don't care about their skin color. I don't care about their gender. I've had female commanders that are some of the best, and I've had a male commander that was probably the shittiest commander ever in the history of armed forces ever. I mean, like, there was Custer, and then there was this guy, like, right above him. And honestly, once if you're dealing with a female colonel, just based on, you know, where we are in our progression in our history of when females were coming in and getting their promotions and starting to make ranks above colonel and general, they are some of the brightest in the room. So I really have no problem with that. I just want the best to be there, because I want to know that the best are making those decisions. I want to know that I'm working for the best. I'm not going to be ever a general. Never. I will never be a general. And I'm okay with that. But I want the people I'm working for, the people I'm supporting, the people I'm behind, to be the smartest and the brightest. Mostly because they are establishing, you know, when they go in to do their job now, they're not really controlling the army that we have right now. They're more setting conditions for the army we'll have in 5 or 10 years. So if my son decides he wants to join the army, I want to know he's going into an institution that's going to be guided by the best and the brightest. So after saying all that, I mean, I've had personal experiences with all this stuff. I've seen it numerous times. I mean, you're on pins and needles anytime you're anywhere. I mean, I started my career in all male units. All male, 100% male. That was the first 5 years of my career. And then the Army said, hey, you have to change over to this job now, and it's mixed, 50-50. And, it's a little bit of a change. I had no problem. I was never really like a man's man, like somebody that made, just vulgar, offhanded jokes. I was actually sort of kind of disgusted by what Donald Trump said about grabbing by the pussy. Yeah, he can say that in a private conversation. I don't have a problem with it. But, it's stuff I've heard. It's not really a conversation I would participate in, but I wouldn't really, jump in and shut it down if it was two guys having a conversation, right? So, I've never really been that kind of alpha aggressive person. So I've had my run-ins, let's say. I've been reported to EO for falsely accused of being racist. And I thought the funniest part of this was I'm the guy driving into work on a military base with 2 Obama stickers on my car. But some, like, how do you count for me being racist? Which I always thought was peculiar. That was about I got about 3 of those investigations, and all of them were proved to be false, of course, which is why I have a high degree of skepticism about the reports of hate crimes and, racist comments being made, because I've been investigated for being racist by the system in the military, and every time it was proven to be false. So I take those with a grain of salt. And it's proving to be true as we see more and more of these stories that come out. Lo and behold, they turn out to be false. So I've had personal run-ins with this fucking SJW gone run amok system. So, and one of those is, there was one time we were having our semi-annual sexual harassment, rape prevention training. Okay, great. Army says we have to do it. We'll do it. We'll do it the best we can. Move out, draw fire. We'll do it because we're ordered to, and we have to. And it's all of us. Officers, sergeants, privates, you all get put in a room, and, depending on how the training's laid out, you have a little bit of leeway on how you do the training. You can have outside organizations come in and do the training. You can do the training yourself as long as you have like a certified person there, a person that's been certified by the Army to be like a victim advocate or a responder, a first responder. So there's many ways you can do it, but on this one occasion, we're doing it, and we have like the base subject matter expert on the SHARP program come in and do the training. That's all of us. Me, officers, all the officers, enlisted sergeants. In a room, we have to do it. We're doing it. Now, during the course of this training, it always comes to a point where you get to ways to discussing how to prevent yourself from being a victim of rape. Things like, don't leave your drink laying around so you get roofied. Go out with friends that are going to be there to help you. Have one person that stays sober and kind of sits back and watches things and make sure you're taken care of if you're going to go real heavy into the drinking. Maintain your situational awareness of your surroundings if you're out late at night, which is why you have, the one designated driver or a person that's not drinking, sort of look out for all of you. It's the same briefing I've done for years. I've heard it for years, and except at this point, when we're doing the briefing, I've been watching like anti-feminist videos on YouTube, like Sargon of Akkad, and many of the other anti-feminist Thunderfoot, and because I always thought if you were an anti-feminist, you were just a misogynist, And I'm starting to change my mind on all these things at this time as I'm getting new information. So one soldier chimes up, and I know she's a liberal. I've known her for years, and I sort of know the direction she's going to go in because I can see her getting restless and uneasy at this point and sort of shifting in her chair, and says something to the effect of, we should just teach men not to rape. She is disgusted for some odd reason that we would give women agency, and it's not just women, by the way, there are men who get raped as well. We'd give them agency for their safety and security. And already at this point, I'm fucking exhausted. And I've nearly face-palmed to the back of my fucking brain. And I have rolled my eyes so much during the briefing that I thought I would have to get them extracted, rolled around, put back in my eye sockets so they would focus properly. So the briefing had included the debunked 1 in 5 statistic among many of the other debunked facts straight out of UC Berkeley's manual on third wave feminism. At this point I'm fucking done. I've already tried arguing the 1 in 5 point, but it's what I'm ordered to do. It's not illegal, unethical, or moral, so I do it. Again, even as one of the highest ranking people in the room, my opinion means nothing. This is the policy. This is the procedure. We have to go through it. So I've already argued with the sharp instructor about the 1 and 5, and I tell you, you need to do a little more research on that. But I've already destroyed her on that point. No reason to do anything further to subvert the training and the propaganda we're being told that we have to absorb. I've already raised questions and doubts in people, and that's not my position to do that. So I'm there to make sure we do what we're supposed to do. So the soldier says, we should teach men not to rape. And I say to the soldier, yes, we tell that. We tell all men that. But there are some people who are just utter and complete pieces of shit, and they're going to take advantage of situations if they find them for the taking. It's for the best if you know how to prevent this from happening and protect yourself, because we care about you as a person, and you're an important member of our team, and we don't want you to be a victim of something like this. I say all of this, paraphrasing, and even the instructor, the member of the Politburo that's there to ensure we're following the party line, is shaking her head in agreement with me. The soldier's response, first of all, was kind of disrespectful to me as a person, and second, made no account of my rank compared to hers, and it was a breakdown in discipline, to say the least. And it wasn't hostile, because it was hostile, sort of disrespect. I would have taken care of it right there. It was just sort of this disrespect in tone, mood, and manner, and the way she was addressing me. That was really out of character for her, most of all. Not sort of the disciplined go-getter that I had seen everywhere in every other encounter with her. And I'd known her for a long time. I'd been in the soldier in other units. So it's like at this point, because we are discussing this thing, we are in the kingdom of social justice, that none of the discipline, none of the laws and regulations, and she outranks me by virtue of victimhood, by a virtue on the hierarchy of the oppression Olympics. She's a female, and she has short hair, so she outranks me in this room when we're discussing this thing, and she can be disrespectful. And really, it didn't hit me until after the briefing, because I sort of just wanted to plow through and get it done, and that was right at the end. So, and really, as I was looking back on the conversation, I'm like, yeah, it's a little weird. That's not her usual tone or manner. And it's funny because, we have discussions that, hours after or the days after, and she's the same very disciplined, very yes sir, no sir person that I've known before this, years before this, and just not during that meeting, because we're in a special bubble, a safe space where, rules and laws and regulations and, discipline don't matter. Now, take that anecdote and apply it on a grander scale. The military operates on this idea of this idea of discipline, right? Of this idea of unquestioning discipline sometimes. So as I've said before, most of our commanders are white. So why should any black soldier have to listen to them? At any time, they could pull the oppressed victim card, and no commander wants an EO complaint. That's not something you want. I've received them. I've been investigated for them, and I've been proven not to be a racist officially in the eyes of the Politburo. And the military especially doesn't want to raise the cackles of the online social justice hate mob. That's one thing they don't want to do, bad press. And this is a mob that is mostly disconnected from military service anyways, and has no clue about our culture or our standards. So what are these commanders going to do? This is a slow rotting and rusting of order and discipline, and it is the real problem of the infection of social justice inside the military. The subversive nature of it is bad. This is especially bad for the military that is looked to around the world to be the shield and sword when the shit has hit the fan. For better or worse, our military is relied upon heavily to protect the world from current and emerging threats for ourselves and our allies. What happens when this military is slowed down and it's slowly degraded? by a subversive ideology like this cultural Marxism that is slowly becoming our doctrine and policy. And it's becoming this muck that is clogging the gears of the machine that provides a ready and able force that sends forces out to combat our enemies and meet those threats on the battlefield. Just something to think about. But and if you look over the last couple months, we've seen current active duty service members. Think about the atmosphere that has to be in place. Think about the culture that has to be in place. We have seen active duty military members take pictures of themselves sitting during the national anthem as a form of protest to support Colin Kaepernick and his misguided and ill-intentioned virtue signaling stunt. It's a complete disregard for the laws and regulations that govern them. First of all, they aren't civilians. They're a special set of codes and laws that they have to abide by, or they can be punished. They can be, have their rank taken away, have their money taken away, put in jail, put on extra duty. We have seen now the inclusion of transgendered service members, which I don't have a problem with. But we have to pay for their transition? What kind of fucking bullshit is that? However, the military doesn't pay, so we're paying for people to have their sexual organs rearranged if they want to, but the military doesn't pay for service members who have infertility, unexplained infertility, to get in vitro fertilization or other advanced treatments to get have a children. And a lot of this infertility is strongly correlated with service overseas. So honestly, fuck the transitioning transgenders. I don't really care. It affects like 5 people, and I really don't give a fuck about them. And I will admit it is hard for the introspective and liberal in me to discern what of these issues to be addressed and what is just a white male in me. There's my white guilt bristling up, and it's just a white guilt, right? And always questioning my privilege. My liberal side is, anyways. What if this is just a white male in me bristling at change? I have been serving since 1999. By my own merit, I've gone from a private to an officer, but over the years I have seen the culture change. It's always for the better when it pushes for inclusiveness and equality, but when it pushes for exclusiveness and special treatment, it is not in standing with the good order and discipline that makes the United States military specifically great. It spends more time dividing based upon our minor and insignificant differences than uniting us on the things that we agree on. If you're serving in the United States Armed Forces, we agree that at our very base, whether you want to admit it or not, no matter how much of a left-wing lunatic you are, you have to agree that the United States, Western culture, and civilization are something worth defending. Social justice warriors are inherently unpatriotic and hate our country. Look at the books they read, the Noam Chomsky, and any of the others. It's just a cavalcade of America is the worst country on the face of the planet. I see no reason to make room for them in our military and to adapt their customs and cultures in place of our customs and cultures in order to placate them. Not to mention, if the victim culture continues to exponentially multiply in level and frequency of outrage, our enemy won't need bombs to destroy us. In order to neutralize our forces, they'll just need a loudspeaker and somebody to hurl insults. And it will completely destroy our military. So why is much of the military cheering for Mad Dog to be the next SecDef? Mattis does not suffer fools. He is not sympathetic to the demands of whiny victims. Look at some of his quotes. We know that at his heart, he cares about the U.S. military and our ability to defend the U.S. That's it. And he cares about that because that will be his job as Secretary of Defense. not to be a fucking social engineer or a sociologist conducting experiments on people in the most dangerous profession of arms. Experimentation which exposes individuals to death and our country to imminent danger. The social justice left has sacrificed national security for virtue signaling. With President Obama at the helm, it has become apparent that this is our job now. Not killing the people who want to destroy Western civilization. And that is dangerous.